The Orion Capital Systems Tower rose 40 stories of cold glass above the financial district, and on that gray Monday morning every hallway inside it seemed to hum with a sharper kind of tension. The company was less than 72 hours away from closing an $800 million merger with Northbridge Equity, and every decision made in the coming days would pass through the schedule, the inbox, and the signature pad of one woman. The executive assistant to the chief executive officer was not simply a role. It was the last filter between a young chief executive and 1,000 quiet ways a deal this large could be twisted. 37 candidates sat in matched black leather chairs, each of them dressed for a war they believed they already understood. Tailored suits, leather folios, laminated letters of recommendation. One candidate bragged quietly about coordinating calendars across 6 time zones for a hedge fund principal. Another had kept the media scandal silent for 2 full years. They did not speak like applicants. They spoke like finalists in a private competition for proximity to power. Zane Whitaker sat in the front row. His suit was black, cut close, his tie navy blue, his shoes bright enough to catch the overhead light. He said little, but every small remark landed where it was meant to. Clinton Rusk, the acting chief operating officer, passed Zane's chair once and touched his shoulder in a way that was almost nothing, and the 2 men did not look at each other afterward. Serafina Vale entered at exactly 9 o'clock. She wore a cream bodycon dress with a tasteful V-neck, nude heels, and a thin gold watch, and her chestnut hair fell loose over her shoulders. The room fell silent before she reached the head of the long black table. She was 28 years old, the youngest chief executive in Orion's history. Her first sentence was short. She did not need her day to be easier, she said. She needed someone who made sure her mistakes never had a chance to happen. The door opened a moment later, and Finn Mercer stepped through. He was 29, tall, with quiet shoulders, and the tired handsomeness of a man who had grown used to sleeping too little and worrying too much. His white shirt was clean and carefully pressed, but visibly old. His navy trousers a shade past fashionable, his brown leather shoes worn soft at the toe. Against one leg, half hidden behind him, stood a small girl of 6. Her light brown hair was tied a little crooked with a pale blue ribbon, and a white stuffed rabbit was pressed tight under her chin. Her name was Luna. The rabbit's name was Milo, and the rabbit had been the last thing her mother had ever placed in her arms. A ripple of laughter moved through the room before anyone spoke. One candidate whispered that perhaps the daycare was on a lower floor. Zane smiled without sound. Clinton stepped forward with the polite smile of a man who was already thinking of how to remove a problem. "Is the gentleman looking for the childcare wing or the hiring floor?" Clinton asked, and the laughter grew. Finn placed his hand gently on Luna's shoulder. "I have an interview at 9:10, he said. "My name is Finn Mercer." Clinton checked the tablet in his hand. The name was on the list, added by an outside search partner. His face tightened for only a fraction of a second. A name he had not approved had entered a day he had intended to control. Serafina watched from the head of the table. What she saw first was not talent. She saw inconvenience. A single father with a small child at the most delicate hiring of the year was, in her reading, a man who had not mastered his private life, and a man who could not master his private life would not be trusted with hers. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I am hiring an executive assistant. I'm not hiring someone who needs a babysitter." The laughter swelled again, a small bright thing, and Luna bent her head and pressed Milo against her face. Finn knelt, not out of shame but to tie his daughter's shoelace as if the entire room had not spoken. "You sit near the glass, sweetheart," he said quietly. "I will be right in your line of sight." Luna nodded. Her eyes had turned slightly red, but she did not cry. Finn rose and met Serafina's look without flinching. "I understand the position you are filling," he said. "I also understand that your time has value. I will not waste it." The sentence did not beg, and it did not challenge. It held itself up by something simpler than pride. Serafina did not answer. She signaled for the session to begin. The first round was introductions. 60 seconds each. The candidates rose in turn. One spoke of managing calendars for a pharmaceutical chief executive through 4 mergers. Another described guiding a founder through a crisis communications cycle in a single weekend. Each presentation was fluent, polished, faultless in the way a marble floor is faultless. Zane rose near the end. He did not hurry. He said that the right assistant to a chief executive was not a calendar keeper but a filter of power, the person who decided what information reached the executive's desk and what had to be turned away at the door. A brilliant chief executive, he said, should never have to defend her own schedule. The right assistant did that before she knew there was danger. Serafina made a small mark on his file. Clinton allowed himself a small private smile. When Finn's name was called, he did not open a laptop. He did not stand behind a slide. He reached into the gray cloth bag at his side and placed a single sheet of white paper on the table. His name was written across the top bat. Below it was a phone number. Below that was one line. I do not make chief executives look busier to prove I am working. There was a pause. Then the laughter returned, lower this time, uncertain of itself. Clinton picked up the sheet and turned it slowly in the light. Is this a resume? He said, or a reminder someone sticks on a refrigerator. Perhaps the experience section, Zane added, is inside the crayon box. Luna heard that. She had been trying to color a small tree on a piece of paper near the glass wall. Her pencil stopped. She looked toward her father with the quiet, uncertain concern of a child who has begun to sense that the adults in the room are not kind. Finn saw her look. He did not answer Zane. Have you worked as an executive assistant at the executive level? Serafina asked directly. I have. For whom? I cannot say publicly. I am bound by a non-disclosure agreement. The laughter rose again. For people who had spent the morning stacking credentials in full view, an unnamed past was indistinguishable from an invented one. Clinton pressed harder. Convenient, he said. No employer, no introduction, no public profile, and a small child in the hallway. Mr. Mercer, tell us what exactly we are meant to evaluate you on. On the work I do inside this room, Finn said. Serafina's eyes narrowed a little. She also noted that he had not begged, had not mentioned a deceased wife, had not asked for a chance. He did not trade hardship for opportunity. That made him strange to her, and she trusted strange less easily than she trusted pity. Clinton pushed further. The role requires being reachable at all hours, he said. Middle of the night. Early morning. Sudden travel. If your daughter is sick, what happens? If the chief executive needs you at the same hour your daughter needs you, what then? Finn glanced toward Luna. She was watching him, her mouth pressed small. If my daughter is ill, he said, I will arrange for her to be cared for. If the chief executive is in a crisis, I will make sure she is not abandoned inside it. But I will never call my responsibility to my child a weakness. The room did not laugh. A few candidates looked down. Serafina kept her face smooth, but the sentence had reached a place in her she had built walls around, a memory of a small girl waiting alone in a hotel lobby, while adults murmured not to let her bother them. She pushed the memory away. Enough, she said. The next round will show us whether you understand this work at all. The second round was a crisis schedule exercise. Each candidate received a simulated 48-hour calendar for the chief executive. 23 meetings. 6 international calls. 3 legal consultations. 2 board sessions. 1 signing ceremony with press coverage. A dinner with investors. A private flight. Inside the 10-minute window, the simulation added one shock after another. A flight delayed. A lit attorney hospitalized. A foreign partner shifting time zones. A reporter requesting a last-minute interview. A major shareholder demanding a private meeting. Zane executed it with a craftsman's ease. He dragged and dropped, color-coded priorities, carved out 12 minutes of recovery time between 2 heavy sessions so the chief executive could, as he said, restore her executive energy. Finn did not open a laptop. He used a printed sheet and a small blue pencil borrowed that morning from Luna's crayon pouch. A whisper moved through the candidates. He is about to color the chief executive's day, someone murmured. Zane said quietly that he hoped Finn would not draw a rabbit in the margin. Luna heard and turned her face away. Finn marked only a small number of squares. When his turn came to present, Serafina asked why he had flagged only 5 points. Because those 5 points, he said, can take control of the deal out of your hands. The others only make you tired. The room grew still. Finn laid the sheet flat. The meeting with in-house counsel, he explained, had been pushed to a slot after the call with Northbridge. If the chief executive spoke to Northbridge before counsel reviewed the updated annex, she risked confirming by voice, a term she had not yet read. The 12-minute gap between the board session and the press call looked like rest time, but was in practice the kind of hallway moment in which a tablet is handed to a tired executive under the label of a procedural confirmation. Most bad decisions, he said quietly, do not happen in the boardroom. They happen in the corridor, when the chief executive is too tired to ask again and trust the person standing next to her. Serafina's attention sharpened. Finn moved to the third mark. A minor investor meeting had been moved from the main boardroom to a smaller side room on a different floor, with a different audiovisual setup. If this were a real schedule, he would ask why the chief executive was being moved, on signing day, to a less secure room. The fourth mark.e. 2 international calls stacked without a document review window in between, though the parties had directly conflicting interests. The fifth. The investor dinner, scheduled after 14 straight hours of work, the hour in which people agree to things by reflex rather than judgment. Clinton cut in. You were turning a calendar test into a conspiracy novel. Finn did not look at him. He kept his eyes on Serafina. This work is not about making calendars pretty, he said. This work is about keeping someone else from using your calendar to steer you into the decision they want. The head of human resources nodded without meaning to. Serafina wrote the sentence down in full, the first full sentence she had recorded all morning. Zane noticed the shift. If every assistant reads a schedule like a battlefield, he said smoothly, a chief executive will never make a decision quickly enough. Making a decision quickly, Finn answered, is not the same thing as being pressed into the only answer left. It was his first real win. Quiet, without theater. Serafina moved his file from the reject stack to the one marked review. Clinton watched her hand move and felt the first cold edge of concern. Clinton understood by then that Finn would not be dismissed by attacking his resume. He suggested, with gentle authority, that the next round should be the executive service round, testing each candidate's handling of a chief executive's live personal demands. On the surface, it was reasonable. Assistants prepared meeting rooms, called cars, filtered calls, greeted guests, coordinated stylists, printed papers. In Clinton's hands, it became a stage for humiliation. He selected Finn to go first, delivered contradictory information, left out key details, and invited the rest of the room to watch. 12 tasks, in 7 minutes. Order the chief executive's preferred coffee. Prepare the car at the sublevel garage. Print a 17-page signing packet. Answer a call from a major investor. Confirm a changed boardroom. Choose a dress for the afternoon press moment. Arrange seating for 3 shareholders who did not speak to each other. Accept a gift from a partner firm. Forward a legal email to the chief executive. Remind her to sign a gala attendance confirmation. Send a temporary access code to a visiting guest. Prepare a 5-line summary of the deal. Clinton delivered the tasks quickly, almost performatively. A few candidates smiled, certain Finn would flounder. Zane crossed his arms in the attitude of a man watching a server wander accidentally into a boardroom. Finn did not rush. He asked exactly 3 questions. Who approved the boardroom change? What device would be used to send the temporary access code? Had the gift from the partner firm cleared compliance? Clinton frowned. You have 7 minutes, not 7 days. Finn did not answer him. He ordered the coffee but did not send it until he had confirmation of the chief executive's caffeine window before signing. He arranged the car but asked for driver verification. He began printing the packet but stopped at page 14 because the index pagination did not match. He declined the partner gift, citing active deal protocol. He did not select a dress. That was a personal image decision for a stylist or the chief executive herself, not an assistant. He did not send the temporary access code by ordinary email. He did not forward the legal message because the recipient was not on the approved confidentiality list. Clinton laughed loudly this time. "You have refused nearly half of your assigned tasks," he said. "An assistant of mine would be terminated within the hour. Your assistant may be the one who keeps you comfortable," Finn replied. "I'm trying to keep a chief executive from leaking data, breaching compliance, or signing something she should not." The human resources director checked the scoring sheet and hesitated. 5 of the 12 tasks had indeed been compliance and ethics traps. Clinton had not planned for Finn to recognize them. Finn had caught nearly all of them. Zane, sensing the room tilt, turned personal. "Of course he is careful," he said. "When a man's life is one small child in a canvas bag, he has plenty of time to worry." The sentence landed harder than the earlier ones. Luna rose from her chair by the glass, Milo pressed tight against her cheek. Her eyes filled. The whole room looked at Finn, waiting for an explosion that a lesser story would have offered them. Finn crossed the floor instead. He knelt in front of his daughter and spoke so softly that only she could hear. "Adults sometimes say unkind things," he told her, "when they are afraid of losing something they want. You did nothing wrong." "Did I get you fired?" Luna asked in a small voice. "Did I make you lose your job?" Serafina heard it. The question pierced her from across the room in a place she had long ago pretended did not exist. She, who had once sat in the lobby of a grand hotel as a child, and heard grown men murmur that the girl should not disturb them. Finn met Luna's eyes. "You will never be the reason I lose anything good," he said. Several candidates looked away. Even the human resources director lowered her eyes. Serafina announced a 5-minute recess. Her voice was cold. Her face was not. Clinton understood at last that a deeper strategy would be needed. After the recess came the email round. Each candidate was given a simulated inbox of 200 messages with 15 minutes to select the 10 the chief executive must read immediately, flag the risks, and draft priority responses. The messages came from board members, attorneys, investors, press contacts, and partner firms. Hidden among them were forgeries, misleading attachments, vague confirmation requests, and the quiet fingerprints of manipulation. Zane worked quickly. He selected messages by the rank of their senders, drafting crisp, corporate responses. Clinton watched with satisfaction. Even Serafina acknowledged his skill. Finn worked more slowly. He did not sort by sender title. He read subject lines, sent times, signatures, attachments, punctuation, time zones, and the chronological order of document versions. A candidate whispered that he was reading emails like old love letters. Zane smiled. Finn selected only 8 Toye. Clinton pounced. The instruction was 10. You did not read the prompt. 8 messages need the chief executive's attention, Finn said. The other 2 are built to make her misread the priorities. Serafina leaned back in her chair. He walked the room through each one. The message from lead counsel carried the correct signature, but the wrong writing style. The counsel always used long M dashes when citing clauses. This version used parentheses. A message from Northbridge had been sent at 7:13 in the morning Eastern Time, but the underlying file metadata showed a last edit at 7:20 Central Time. A file labeled Final Revision was, in fact, an earlier version than one already marked Draft, Reviewed. A press request asked the chief executive to confirm a quoted statement that included the phrase voluntary restructuring, a phrase that could later be cited in a merger announcement as an endorsement. The room was quiet now. Finn pointed to the last message. It was a logistics note announcing that the afternoon signing meeting had been relocated from the main boardroom to a side conference room on the 39th floor. It looked like ordinary administrative traffic, but it had been sent from an operations account rather than the chief executive's office, and it carried no confirmation code from information security. If this were a real inbox, Finn said, he would ask who wanted the chief executive to sign papers in a room not covered by the default security configuration. Clinton broke in. You are speculating again. Finn turned his head. It was the first time he had looked directly at Clinton all morning. I am not speculating, he said. I am reading what someone hoped she would be too busy to read. The silence had weight. Serafina asked if this were her real inbox, what he would do in the first 5 minutes. Freeze. All new signing devices, Finn said. Verify the meeting room by voice with security, not email. Call counsel on a number saved outside the internal directory. Check who created the final version of each file. And do not let anyone stand behind her shoulder with a tablet while she signs. The last sentence made Serafina look toward Clinton for only a breath. Clinton kept his face composed. His fingers tightened on the edge of his tablet. It was the first moment of doubt she had allowed to cross her face in front of anyone who had not yet earned her trust. Clinton knew he could not let Finn into the next 72 hours of her calendar. After the email round, the decision fell into a narrow corridor. Finn was unmistakably the most dangerous mind in the room, but Serafina could see herself through the eyes of the board. A candidate with no public record, a child in the hallway, a morning's worth of awkward laughter, a sheet of paper instead of a resume. In the language of the men who had ruled the building before her, that choice would read as sentiment, and sentiment, from a young female chief executive, would be read as weakness. Clinton met her in the glass corridor outside the hiring room. His tone was soft, his face concerned for the institution rather than himself. Mr. Mercer was clever, he said. He was not suitable. The board had already begun to murmur that Miss Vale was too independent, too driven by instinct. If she placed a man with no verifiable history and a small child at the gate of her calendar, they would say she had hired on feeling. The word feeling did precisely what he had hoped it would. Clinton proposed a compromise. Put Mr. Whitaker on a 72-hour trial. Keep Mr. Mercer on a backup list. He would not be excluded, only moved out of the critical window. Serafina, tired and watched, agreed. When the decision was announced, Finn did not react. He looked first for Luna. She understood before he spoke. Is it because I came here? She asked. He knelt. No, he said. You did not make me lose a job. Adults sometimes need more time to understand the right thing. But they laughed at you. They laughed because they do not know me. That does not make me any smaller. Serafina stood a few steps away and heard every word. She had learned over the years how to receive pleading, to receive the quiet bidding of people hoping to impress her. She had not learned how to receive a man who simply refused to transfer his pain onto his child. What she felt now did not resemble guilt. It resembled ballast. It had not been there before, and now it was. Before leaving, Finn took a page from his small notebook and wrote 3 lines. He handed the page to Madison Cole, the office assistant, and asked her to pass it to Miss Vale. Serafina opened it later in her office. 3 lines. Do not sign any document in the relocated meeting room. Do not use any signing device delivered by Clinton. If Zane says the new version is only a procedural confirmation, call independent counsel first. Her pride rose up hot. A dismissed candidate had just stepped into her company as if he knew its rooms better than she did. She tore the note in half. Her hand moved toward the wastebasket. Then, without knowing why, she pulled open the desk drawer and laid both halves inside. Zane began his trial that afternoon. He was faultless. He remembered her coffee. He opened doors a step before she reached them. He managed her inbox with neat speed. What she did not see was that he was syncing her calendar to a second device, and that Clinton had given him a reserve signing tablet described to information technology as a routine backup. Finn left the tower with Luna. A soft rain had begun. Luna held Milo against her cheek and asked whether her father was sad. Finn looked up at the glass face of the building. I only hope, he said, that they read carefully before they sign. By the next morning, Orion moved faster than usual. The Northbridge merger had entered the final confirmation window, and Clinton reported to Serafina that the main boardroom had experienced a fault in its presentation system. The internal signing session would be moved, he said, to a side boardroom on the 39th floor. Zane stood near her elbow, cradling a new tablet, explaining that her usual signing device had not synchronized the latest version of the document. Something flickered in her mind. 3 torn lines in a drawer. Do not use any signing device delivered by Clinton. But Clinton assured her that information technology had cleared the new tablet. Zane smiled with professional warmth and said, "This version is only a procedural confirmation." The phrase stopped her for half a breath. It was the exact phrasing Finn had warned her about. She looked at Zane, at the smile that was so correct it resembled something rehearsed. Clinton's voice, behind him, was calm. "We are running 8 minutes late with Northbridge," he said. "The board is waiting." Pressure became real. A chief executive could not freeze a scheduled signing because a dismissed candidate had written 3 lines on a notebook page. She told herself she was allowing a stranger's stillness to rent space in her thinking. She accepted the tablet. In that same hour, Finn was driving Luna toward her school. A few blocks from the gate, Luna opened her small backpack and gave a small, sharp gasp. Milo was not inside. The white rabbit that had been the last thing her mother had ever placed in her arms was missing. To an adult, it was a toy. To Luna, it was the weight of her world. Finn turned the car around. At the Orion lobby, the reception desk told him, with practiced regret, that he had no further access to the hiring floor. Clinton had left an instruction that unselected candidates were not to be admitted to executive areas. Luna held the edge of Finn's shirt. Madison Cole crossed the lobby then. She had noticed the morning's unusual boardroom switch and had been uneasy about it without knowing why. She recognized Finn, and when she heard that a small girl had lost her rabbit in the waiting area of the 31st floor, she softened. She led them up, explaining quietly that it was only to the waiting area. At the security desk, Finn's eyes moved across the internal schedule screen. He saw that the chief executive's signing location had been changed twice in 20 minutes. A new presentation device had been linked to her signing account. The device identifier did not match any of the fixed units normally assigned to the chief executive's office. He stopped. His face did not change, and yet something inside it had tightened into focus. Madison recognized it immediately, the way a nurse recognizes a heartbeat change before the machine says so. "What is it?" she asked quietly. "Which device is she holding right now?" Finn said. Madison's face paled. He did not need any more information. He understood the pattern. They were not going to push her to sign with force. They were building a hallway of legitimate pressure. "Room change. Device change. Late clock. Waiting shareholders." A polished assistant murmuring in her ear, and a document labeled as procedure. When the signature cleared, a buried clause would activate a temporary transfer of voting power. "If she signs in the next 3 minutes," Finn said, "they will not need to fire her. They will have made her sign herself out of the company." Madison tried to call the meeting room. It was sealed to outside calls. Finn turned toward the executive elevator. It required a badge he no longer had. He moved for the stairs. Luna caught his hand. "Where are you going?" He knelt. "I have to fix something, sweetheart. Stay with Miss Madison. Milo can wait here with you." "Will they laugh at you again?" she asked. Finn looked into her eyes. "Maybe," he said. "But laughter is not as dangerous as letting bad people win." He ran. The side boardroom on the 39th floor held a close, practiced quiet. Serafina sat at the head of the long table. Members of the board and senior counsel sat to either side. Clinton stood behind her right shoulder. Zane stood to the left, tablet cradled in both hands. The screen on the far wall displayed the document titled, "Final Procedural Confirmation." Zane set the tablet gently before her. "This version is only a procedural confirmation," he said again. The phrase fell into her mind like a small metal tool. The torn note. The man who had walked out the day before, without bitterness. The sentence he had spoken in the calendar round. Bad decisions happen in hallways, not boardrooms. She hesitated. Clinton leaned a fraction closer. "Serafina," he said softly. "We cannot keep Northbridge waiting. This is procedure." A board member, older and distracted, nodded. "Sign," he said. "We read the summary." She lifted the stylus. The door burst open. Finn stood there, breath hard from the stairs, white shirt creased, shoulders squared in a way that made everyone in the room look once, and then look again. A director half recognized him from the day before. Clinton's face went hot. "Call security," he said, loud now, all pretense lifted. "He has no business on this floor." Zane said quickly. "He is not authorized. This is a breach." Serafina stared at him. "What are you doing here?" "Keeping you from signing your company away," he said. The sentence cracked the air. Clinton laughed, short and deliberate, and said that the man was bitter at not being hired. Zane said Finn had been unstable all along, bringing a child to an interview, returning now to vandalize. A board member called for security to escort him out. Finn did not argue. He looked only at her. 3 minutes, he said. "If I am wrong, I will walk out, and you can call the police yourself." Clinton objected too loudly. "This is a privileged document," he snapped. "He has no right to examine it." It was his vehemence that made her pause. If it were only a procedural document, why did 3 minutes frighten him? Serafina set the stylus down. 3 minutes. Clinton's face drained a shade. Zane swallowed. Finn did not touch the document. He asked her instead to open the version history herself. She did. The file creation timestamp did not align with legal's final transmission. He asked her to open the device metadata for the signing tablet. The identifier belonged to no fixed unit in the chief executive's office. He asked her to check the last editing credential. Clinton's operations account appeared. A murmur ran through the board. Clinton said, "I approve logistics. That is normal." Approving logistics, Finn said, does not create a voting annex. Serafina's head turned sharply to the screen. Finn pointed to a small embedded link inside the document. The language was dry and correctly worded, a short annex filed beneath a restructuring confirmation clause. He translated it in plain words. If she signed, her signature would be used to confirm her consent to a temporary transfer of voting authority in any emergency restructuring scenario. The recipient of the temporary authority would be the Operations Committee. The head of the Operations Committee was Clinton Rusk. The silence in the room was no longer polite. Zane tried one last sentence. "That is an extreme interpretation," he said. "Then call independent counsel," Finn answered. "Use a number from outside the internal directory." Serafina did not turn to Zane. "Call," she said. Zane did not move. And in that stillness, in that single failure to perform the simplest verification step his role required, she understood. The perfect assistant she had picked out of pride was the weakest thing in the room. Serafina reached for her personal phone, pulled a number from a saved contact older than her company, and dialed her independent attorney directly. He listened for less than a minute before telling her, in the flat voice of a man who had seen this pattern before, to stop everything on her end until he arrived. The annex Finn had indicated could, he confirmed, activate a transfer of voting power with a valid electronic signature and today's recorded board minutes. The room fractured. A shareholder demanded to know who had introduced the annexed file. A director pressed Clinton for an answer. Clinton kept his voice steady at first, invoking a routing error, suggesting legal had forwarded the wrong version. Finn continued quietly to lay out 3 observations. The boardroom had been moved to the 39th floor to escape the default security configuration. The signing device Zane delivered had never belonged to the chief executive's office. Clinton's operations account had created the annex linking permission 18 minutes before the meeting. Serafina ordered information technology, through her phone, to lock Clinton's account immediately. For the first time in anyone's memory of him, Clinton lost his polish. He told her she was too young, too proud, that the board had already stopped trusting her, that Northbridge would have stabilized the company while she was busy holding a chair by sentiment. The word sentiment struck her exactly where he had aimed it, but this time she did not slip. She looked at him with a composure he had not prepared for. "You were almost right about one thing," she said. "I hate being called emotional. That is why I nearly chose the man who would betray me instead of the man who told me the truth." Zane tried to split himself from the blame. He was only following onboarding guidance, he said quickly. Nothing more. Finn did not let him past. If this were only onboarding, Finn said. Why did you use the exact sentence, only a procedural confirmation? Zane's mouth opened and nothing came out. Zane's composure collapsed in pieces. He admitted, in short, uneven sentences, that Clinton had promised him the position of Chief of Staff after Northbridge took control. He had believed, he said, that it was internal politics, not an unlawful seizure. His testimony, spoken in the presence of board members and counsel by phone, isolated Clinton entirely. Serafina instructed security to escort Clinton out. She ordered the signing devices locked, the room sealed, all system logs preserved, and the merger paused. There was no fight, no shouting. Clinton's collapse arrived through documents and system logs read by a man most of the people in the room had laughed at the morning before. When Clinton had been led away, Serafina turned to Finn. The entire room turned with her. A shareholder who had mocked him only the day before cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer," the shareholder said, "may I ask where you have worked before this?" Finn paused a moment. "In places," he said, "where one learns that large mistakes are usually hidden inside very small tasks." It did not name a company. It did not need to. She asked him into her office afterward. No board. No Clinton. No laughter. Only the thick stillness that settles on a powerful person who has nearly lost everything because of how she had chosen to see a man. He stepped in but did not sit. He looked through the glass. Luna was in the sitting area outside, Milo recovered and held against her collarbone, Madison beside her. Serafina saw her, and for the first time that morning she did not see inconvenience. She saw a small girl who had sat in a cold room full of strangers, and heard grown men laugh at her father. "I owe you an apology," Serafina said. "The person you owe first," Finn said, "is not me." She understood. She could have apologized to him as a chief executive correcting a hiring mistake. But real change required something harder. She stepped out of her office. Madison rose. She waved her back down. She knelt in front of Luna. The chief executive, in her cream dress and nude heels, lowered herself to the eye level of a 6-year-old girl who gripped a white rabbit like a lifeline. "This morning," Serafina said, "I said something unkind about your father. I am sorry." Luna looked at her for a long time. "Do you still think my dad is not good?" she asked. "No," Serafina said. "I think your father is the best person in this building today. Then why did you let them laugh at him?" The question found the root. Finn moved as if to step in. Serafina lifted one hand, gently, to signal that she would answer. "Because I was afraid of looking wrong in front of other people," she said. "And when adults are afraid, sometimes they let good people be hurt. That was my fault." Luna was quiet. Then she set Milo down on the seat beside her, as if she had decided something. "My dad does not like to make anyone ashamed," she said. Serafina looked at Finn. No resume in any building had ever described him more precisely. Back inside her office, she slid a new contract across her desk. Not a trial position. The role of executive assistant to the chief executive officer, with direct report line, override authority over any signing process he flagged as at risk, and flexible scheduling protections that named his daughter as a protected consideration. He read it slowly. He did not flinch at the salary. He examined the child care protocols, the confidentiality terms, the clauses on pausing procedures, and the emergency hour limits. She watched him and understood that he knew his worth and also knew his life. The two were not in conflict for him. "I would like you beside me," she said. "I will not let my daughter become a weapon anyone in this company uses to make me smaller," he said. "From today," she answered, "anyone who tries loses their place at Orion." He looked at her for a beat longer. He needed to know whether she spoke from emotion or decision. She did not look away. She opened her drawer and drew out the torn note. It had been taped back together with clear tape. She handed it to him. "I tore it because I was proud," she said. "I kept it because some part of me already knew you might be right." He took it. He looked at the tape line across the paper. It was, he realized, an accurate picture of what had just begun between them. Imperfect. Once torn. Rejoined by something truer than pride. He signed. There was no embrace. No rushed romance. There was a handshake. But she held his hand a breath longer than formality required. Finn noticed. So did she. Neither of them said anything about it. 3 months passed. Ariane had changed. Clinton was under formal investigation. Zane had stepped permanently out of the executive assistant profession after his testimony became part of the legal record. The Northbridge merger had been withdrawn, then restructured on terms favorable to Orion. Serafina had rebuilt the operations division and moved every authentication device through an independent review system. Finn had become her executive assistant in name and in power. He did not grow showy. He still wore a crisp white shirt, navy trousers, polished brown leather shoes. What had changed was the reaction around him. In the hallways, staff moved aside not from fear but from respect. Her office had changed too. In the corner, near the window, stood a tall green plant. It had arrived a few weeks after Finn's first day, without announcement. On her first visit to the office after school one afternoon, Luna had said that the office was beautiful, but had no living thing in it. Serafina had not explained the plant to anyone. When Luna visited now, after school, she checked the soil with the seriousness of a small inspector. At the annual shareholders' meeting, a board member asked Miss Vale to explain why she had granted strategic access to a man with no public record at any major firm. It was an echo of the morning's opening mockery, dressed in formal clothes. Serafina did not deflect. She looked across the room. Because, she said, while everyone with a perfect resume was reading titles, he was reading the truth. This company nearly lost everything because we mistook appearance for capability. Finn stood one step behind her, in the correct position of an executive assistant. But that single step was no longer distance. It was the measure of trust. After the meeting, Luna came into the office with a new drawing. It showed a tall glass tower, a man in a white shirt, a small girl holding a rabbit, and a woman with long brown hair in a cream dress. Beside the tower was a very large tree. On its branches, Luna had drawn 3 red apples. What are the 3 apples for? Serafina asked. 1 for my dad, Luna said. 1 for me, and 1 for you. Serafina did not speak. For her, it was not only a drawing. It was an invitation into a place she had spent her whole life not knowing how to enter. A small family, imperfect, warm. Finn stood in the doorway watching. He did not smile broadly. The corner of his mouth shifted only a little. For a man built like him, that was already a door opening. At the end of that day, when the tower began to empty, Finn carried his gray cloth bag. Luna held his hand, and Milo sat tucked under his arm. Serafina stepped out of her office and slowed her pace so that she walked at the same speed as the 2 of them. The elevator opened. The 3 of them stepped in together. The doors closed on the chief executive, looking down at the small girl looking up at the chief executive, and Finn standing quietly beside them. The man who had been laughed at for bringing his daughter to an assistant's interview was now the last person to leave the executive floor with the chief executive officer, not as a man being pitied, not as a man who had been lucky, but as a man who had proven that real capability, quiet kindness, and unbroken dignity could save an empire.